Hey, everybody, welcome to a bonus episode of the Barrett and Baxa podcast. You're going to notice something right away that in the other frame is not Bob Baxa, but someone else that I know, Peter Bernard, who's going to join us today for this kind of special episode. We're going to start interviewing people now that we've gotten past our 10th episode. We're very proud of that. And so one of the things we want to do is go back and talk to journalists about journalism. So the man you're looking at there is Peter Bernard. He is a retired street television reporter, most recently from WFLA. Tell me if I get any of this wrong. You're also a meteorologist.
True.
You're a pilot.
True.
You're a Tesla ambassador, I think you call it.
Well, I used to sell them, and here in the Villages, I'm on the board for the Villages Tesla Club, and I'm a three-time owner.
And so you already pointed out the other interesting thing to so many people. You are a resident of the famous and sometimes infamous Villages down in Florida. Peter,
All that you've heard is fake. It's not true.
all right, Peter Bernard, what else do we need to know about you before we start this?
I spent 40 years in the television news business. You've kind of gone over some of that. I worked at 6 TV stations all across the country, Idaho, upstate New York, St. Louis, Missouri, Pocatello, I mean, all over the place. My last 2 jobs were at Channel 28, where I met you. And then
We worked together.
Yeah, we worked together. And then I was on the beach for about 6 months. And then a guy named Forrest Carr, the former news director at Channel 8, brought me in as a freelancer over there. And then eventually, after 6 months there, the corporate said, you either got to cut him loose or bring him on board. And they brought me on board.
All right. So, needless to say, you have been in the news business for a very long time, and you have a lot of insight into something that I like to talk about on our podcast, and that's the way that the news business has really just fallen apart and become a completely different thing over the last 3, 4 decades.
I agree. I can't imagine being a young person being interested in journalism now and having your sights set at going to be a television reporter. Really, in my opinion, you have to have a heartbeat to work there, and you have to be able to accept about $40,000. And they really like these. I guess they call them influencers, or they post half-naked pictures of themselves on the internet. Really, the idea of being a journalist and going out there and breaking stories and being investigative, I think it's gone out the window for the most part.
It was a lot different when we were young. I mean, I kind of had to work my way up. I started on the studio floor at WSAW in Wausau, Wisconsin. I think it was like the 135th market. But I had to pay my dues
Yeah,
before
but
I
you don't
was
have
ever
You don't
allowed
have
to
to pay
write a
your dues
script.
anymore. I've seen people at Channel 8 that get out of college and they bring them in and they're all of a sudden they're on the air. And of course they say and do stupid stuff. Sometimes they'll take somebody who's a little bit of a veteran and say, hey, can you watch that person and can you help them? And it used to turn me off because like you, I paid my dues too. And I don't think you should walk into market 13 or 14, which is what Tampa is, I think, these days, maybe even higher. And here's somebody who's just got out of college and they don't even know how to write a script.
Well, but one of the things now is that those television stations aren't what they used to be. I mean, I remember when we would do the news in Tampa on our television, it'd be a stadium full of people watching your newscast.
Yeah.
I don't think that exists much anymore.
You know what, Steve? In my last few years, I found I could kind of get a read when I would walk into a restaurant, and people would recognize me from being on television. But my wife and I figured out that it was 60 plus, 65 plus that would say, hey, are you the news guy? Never anyone who's 18, 19, 20. And I've got a son and a daughter that are younger than I. And my son used to say to me, Dad, why would I want to stay up till 11 o'clock to watch the news? I can just get it on my phone. And that used to drive a stake in my heart.
Yeah, because I mean, how many times have you put your story together and had that feeling that, wow, that was so awesome, but it never sees the light of day again?
Right.
At least now we live in a world where it's sort of recorded forever. And if you
Yeah.
want to post it on your social media, that story can be up there for eternity at this point.
Yeah. And I think, Steve, the television stations right now, I know for a fact that Channel 8 is trying to reinvent itself. And their motto is everything first digital, go digital first. I don't know how they're going to make any money on that. I know WFLA.com is a losing proposition because those banner ads you see, hardly anyone clicks on them. And they kind of, I think they give them away. If you buy 30 spots, you get a couple of banner ads on WFLA.com. So I don't know if digital's going to save them right now. The pie, as you know, has been cut. And a lot of folks who are younger than, let's say, 35 or 40 are not watching television news. They just plain don't see it. So my story would go out there and it's like broadcasting into a canyon full of nobody.
Yeah. And now those newsrooms are turning into canyons full of nobody.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, WFLA is a good example of it. They built that beautiful new television station that opened probably what, around the year 2005 or something like that?
yeah, I think it was 2001, but okay.
2001. Okay. A huge facility. And now, like, I walk into where I used to work and it's empty. Half the
Yeah.
desks in the newsroom are completely empty. And the ones that are full are, you have a college student sitting there.
Right. It's even worse at Channel 8. They subleased the top floors to Tampa General Hospital, so it's not even the TV station there. They
Really?
leased yeah, they leased them parking next door, and they walled off the whole thing. For a while there, they leased it, and they were complaining because our news desk is on the second floor, and there's this big expanse with an atrium with a window that's 4 flights up. And it was so loud at the news desk that the people at Tampa General were saying, we can't hear ourselves think up here. So they put walls up. So now they're just tenants in the building. So it's Channel 8, but it's also Tampa General Hospital.
And these newsrooms, if people like, if you watch a lot of movies like broadcast news or something like that, this is what newsrooms were really like. I mean, they were vibrant places where people are running around, yelling at each other, papers flying across the room. I remember that. I mean, I distinctly remember the excitement of that in the newsroom. And now it's like crickets when you walk
Yeah.
into a newsroom a lot of
Well,
times,
I think TV stations, and I'm living in the Orlando market, so I watch WESH and Channel 9 and Channel
which is
6.
where I was for
Right,
17
right,
years. Yeah.
right. And I find that most of them are doing, I call it low-hanging fruit. They're doing police blotter stories. Our top story today on Channel 9, your old alma mater, is some dumbass shooting in the hood somewhere that has no effect on my life. They have no context. They don't go back later on and say, why was there a shooting and where'd the victim come from? It's just low-hanging fruit. It's what the police put out on a news release. They go out and do a live shot and call it news. It's not news. I don't care about that. Did someone die that really that's going to affect my life? Granted, I hate it when anyone gets shot, and I don't want to say that I'm condoning that in any way, but it's not news in my opinion. A shooting out there, somebody robs a bank, happens all the time. Car accidents happen all the time. House fires happen all the time, and that'll be the big story. A house fire in South Orlando. I don't care.
And for the longest time, I mean, we were the guys at those, crime scenes. We were standing there at the crime scene tape. I know you've done it a million times.
Steve, I remember working on a story for 7 or 8 hours, seven, last, and getting ready to present it. It's 10 o'clock, and I get a call from the desk. Peter, we need you to go check out what you name it, a car accident. And I'd say, well, what about my story? We'll VOSOT that. And for those that don't know, it's a VO with a sound on tape, meaning
Right.
we're going to reduce your story down to something that lasts about 20 seconds. And I'd stand out there at the house fire or car wreck in front of police line tape. And at that time, I didn't know much what was going on behind me because the cops aren't, the PIO, public information officer, didn't respond. So I'd say, yeah, you can see I just described what I see. There's two cars. One looks pretty well damaged. They took someone off on a stretcher. Back to you. Tomorrow morning at the water cooler at work, no one's going to be talking about that story. Whereas hopefully the one that I pitched at 3 o'clock and I went out and did and worked on it all day, that would have been the one that everyone talked about. But nope, we got to go cover the car accident.
And I think that comes from these producers that just don't have any life experience. I mean, I remember in the end, when I started, the producer of the show probably was one of the people with the most experience in news in the newsroom.
Well
So
respected.
as a reporter, you would think to yourself, well, this person knows what they're talking about. But as time went on, that person became someone who hasn't bought a house in their life, has never paid off a car in their life, probably still has their student loans, probably
No
still
kids.
has mom and dad still send them money because they don't make enough money in broadcast journalism. They've never been on a PTA. They've never, none of these things that really matter in life have they ever done. And they are producing or stacking, as we call
Yeah,
it, the
right,
show that you were going
right.
to watch. So they stack it with what you said, that low hanging fruit that no one really cares about. It's interesting. I mean, if there's great video somehow, maybe that gets you to talk about it. But your average everyday shooting at a 7-Eleven or a house that burns down, no
Don't
one
care.
really cares.
No, I used to say to people that our producers were in diapers and I was doing live shots.
Yeah. That's not far from the truth.
No, and you're right. I think I've run into some. I've had some really good producers. There's a guy at Channel 8. His name is Daniel Woodrum. I just think he's fantastic, and he's not a show stacker. He really thinks about how can I tease the story coming up, and he would weave. He's a great wordsmith, and he was just fantastic at making the show in some semblance of logic. Whereas the ones you and I are just talking about here. Okay, we're going to have the car accident and the house fire and then the shooting and oh, the school board's meeting today. Oh my God. And you know
Yeah.
what? I think the key, and I know you know this already, so I'm preaching to the choir. The key to to writing a good story is the first line or two has to suck them in. I used to tell people you had to grab them by the
Yeah.
jugular and say, you got to see this story. So I think I was good, patting my own self on the back here, that I was good. If my story was just dull from the word go, I would blow a little air into it and puff it up. I'm not exaggerating the story, but I would puff it such that people were interested. You could say sewer rates are going up. My lead line might be, you're going to pay more to flush the toilet next month. Not lying, but I'm puffing it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think anybody thinks about that anymore because they don't have to. They really are just reporting almost whatever came across the scanner that day or whatever was in the tweet that was sent out from the police department about
Right.
that particular crime. Even police departments have changed. They don't and city governments and things, they don't send out good old-fashioned press releases really anymore. They just put it out on social media
Yeah, they
and
do.
call that
And
a press release.
And the best PIOs are the ones that are available at pretty much any time. I was at Channel 8 for 17 and a half years. And so I got so that I knew all the PIOs. I had their personal cell phones. So I could call them at 10:15 and say, hey, they're sending me to this car accident. Is there anything to it? And sometimes they'd say, yeah, I would be there if I were you because maybe there's something about it that we're going
Yeah.
to find out later. And you're going to need that B-roll tomorrow morning. They may not be able to tell me what's going on now, but
So remember when you used to have to wait for the body to come out for some
yeah,
reason?
and then they prohibited us showing it.
Yeah, and then it went the opposite that nobody wanted you to show the body anymore.
Yep.
Hey,
I
I'm
remember our photographer on sticks from about 50 yards away zoomed in and they would bring out the body and they'd say, okay, we got, and they take the camera off the sticks and we could go home.
yeah, that was it. That was the night's over. You can pack up and leave.
Don't you find, Steve, that I think I'm jaded now. When I used to do stories, sometimes I'd write them before I got there. A house fire, smoke can be seen for miles.
Yeah.
It just,
Well,
we
you get
all,
so good at it. After a
yeah,
while, you get so, I was talking the other day with Bob Baxa, who, is not with us right now, but about how you get so used to it, you could be talking live on television and thinking about your grocery list on the other half of your brain.
I saw that on your blog the other day and I said, oh, spot on, man. That's me. I did that too. And sometimes it was dangerous because I'm thinking, hey, you're live on TV right now. You
Right.
could say
You
something
better
that's
pay attention to what you're saying.
yeah, you could be
Yeah.
off color right now or, say shit or fuck or something like that. Oh, stop,
Well,
stop.
you can do that on podcasts, Peter.
I
That's
know.
the
I saw
beauty
that
of it.
episode too.
Yeah. I mean, I really, I would turn myself a little bit into a different person when I was on television, but then I tried not to because I also wanted to avoid that, perfect broadcast journalism voice that everyone likes to use. I always felt like it was much more comfortable for me and the viewer if I just sort of spoke to you like I'm speaking to you now. Hey,
Right.
here's what's
Yes.
going on behind me. This car was involved in the accident after the police chase, and now they're looking for two men who fled on foot. They went into the neighborhood off here to the east, and we're at the corner of blah blah blah. And you would just make it up off the top of your head. That was the stuff that I loved the most. Was when I didn't have a piece of paper, a big script right in front of me the whole time, and I could just riff on whatever's happening right now and whatever I'm seeing.
People used to tell me that I was best at storm coverage, aftermath, and just winging it. I can't, just like you, I would arrive at, let's just say 58 minutes after the hour. I'm on in 2 minutes, and I look around, run up to the PIO or whoever else is there. Sometimes cops would tell me, look, not for the record, but here's what happened. And I would just go and fly with it. And it was fantastic. I like the just off the cuff stuff, storm damage stuff. Oh, the tornado just came through and they've got the chainsaws out and the people are out of their homes and you can see there's no roof there. That stuff.
Yeah.
When I would throw it back, when I would do my SIG out, Peter Bernard, News Channel 8 on your side, I would turn to the photographer and we'd high five each other and say, yes, yes, we did it.
Yeah, I love that too. Hurricanes in Florida, hurricanes are fun for journalists. At least most. There are a lot of people that are afraid to do it. But I'm not one of those. You weren't one of those.
I wasn't afraid, but we were told, I think that deep down inside, they were more afraid of the equipment than us. They would say, make sure your mics don't get wet and park the live truck under an overpass and all. We had tricks of the trade that we knew that we could avoid the brunt of the storm if we had to. And we knew that if we saw the water rising and we knew there was going to be a storm surge, we're not going to sacrifice a $500,000 live truck over that. I remember there was that one storm, I can't remember the name, but it came up the spine of Florida and it was in the inland area. So it came up through Bowling Green, Florida.
Yeah, I think that was Irma.
Yeah, yeah. And I was at a school in like Brooksville, which is not on the coast, and I saw a piece of metal come by, and then it hit a tree, and you know how it wraps around, and I'm thinking, if that had hit me, that would have been an end to me.
Yeah, we had one of our people once knocked out cold standing right outside of the television station, and just a piece of an HVAC system or something, a panel came off, and fortunately, it hit them broadside instead of this way, which would have really been bad. But it kind of knocked them down, knocked them out for a second, and they got up and they were okay. But I never put myself in the storm. I never wanted to be one of those people that was standing there being whipped in the wind. I thought it was more dramatic if you stood in a parking garage and you said, look, we're going to peek the camera around the corner because it's really dangerous right now. Yeah, and it really was. There was, I have had situations where, a fire started once when I was covering, I think, oh gosh, we were in Houma, Louisiana, and this was not Katrina, but it was a hurricane like 2 years after Katrina, and a house fire started. And we went to the house fire, and a wind came my way and blew hot embers right into my mouth. And so I'm trying to spit these embers out of my mouth, and it burned my lip and my tongue pretty bad. And
oh my God.
I thought, well, that's something I hadn't had happen before. So
I used to beg the desk not to send me to the EOC. And for your viewers that don't know what that's, the Emergency Operations Center. I hated going in there. And just all you had was people on phones and TV monitors behind you. And that's no way to cover a storm. Do not send me to the EOC. I'll do anything. Yeah. Please send me out.
Yeah, I never want to be where the official information is coming out. I want to be somewhere else. It's like when you show up at the crime scene and they say, hey, there's a staging area 3 blocks away at, this particular school. I always said, no staging area for me. I'll stay right here where the action is. I'll send another crew to the staging area.
Send someone else. I had another thing too. I don't know if you had this situation. When you're all lined up at a crime scene and maybe the reporter that's standing 3 feet next to you starts talking, that used to drive me crazy. Of course, I had my IFB and I had what I was going to say, but I would hear them. I wanted to be far away, and I just even say to the photographer sometimes, I said, can you set me up like 20 yards over there so I don't have to listen to all this jibber jabber, especially the Channel 13 people went on at 10 o'clock, and I don't want to hear what they're doing. I've got my own thing going on.
Yeah. The only time that if I really had something good, if I interviewed someone that I knew no one else was going to get at 5 o'clock, I would stand there in that line of reporters and I'd say, and coming up at 6, I have an exclusive interview with the man who was had that gun right in his face. He spoke to us exclusively, and we're going to have that coming up at 6.
Yeah,
and all the other reporters would go, "What? What do you have? But how'd you get that?"
Yeah,
I used to love doing that one.
By the way, I have another thing about live shots. I used to do weather for years, and sometimes I would do weather remotes. And like flies to a light bulb, people would crowd all around me, even behind me, to get on TV. So I figured out a little trick. They didn't watch their watch, so they didn't know what time in the newscast we were at. So I would do a fake weather report and partly cloudy skies and blah blah blah, and we're here. Well, I wasn't even on the air. and I was making it, and they saw me with the microphone up, and I'd turn to them and I'd say, "That's it, guys," and they'd all scatter, and then I'd do the real thing.
Yeah, that was a good way to do it. Yeah, I've had some hecklers in my day standing in the background, and man, that just makes you so uncomfortable because you can hear them yourself, but a lot of times because you know how sensitive the microphone is,
Yeah,
that the viewer can't hear what that person's saying, but they're just
right.
off to the side annoying the hell out of you while you're
Yep.
trying to do your job. That's when
Uh,
the two brains come in handy,
Many
Peter.
times my photographers would get keyed in that there's somebody behind that is going to do something stupid on TV. So we would shift the angle slightly so you don't see them. But sometimes they would notice it and move over. And so we were constantly doing this thing with the camera to get someone who we thought was going to be a troublemaker off the air.
All right, so Peter, I want to sort of wrap. We've been talking for a while about what the hell happened and the state of broadcast news, and we've talked about the past, but I want to talk about the future. But before, I want you to talk about one of the things that you said annoys the hell out of you, and that's this trend of reporters and anchors like doing dances and
Oh,
things
God.
in the studio and putting together their little videos.
I can't stand, Steve. That is one of the things that irks the crap out of me. I see it all the time. I'm constantly scouring Facebook for what's going on, and there'll be somebody out there, usually females, doing a little dance, but sometimes all of them on the set with logos dancing and doing it. And mainly it's to really bad music, and they're mouthing the music. They're doing like a lip sync. I hate that stuff. There's a guy that lives in your town. His name is Scott Jones, and he runs a website called FTV Live. And
Yeah.
he and I see eye to eye on that. And I will tell you right now that I am the source. If I see something like that, I send him the clip so he can put it on his
Oh.
website and chastise them because I can't stand it. You're either a journalist or you're an influencer, or if you want to be a model. If you want to be a model, that's fine with me. Go be a model. But television journalism, it's sacred. When you have that flagged microphone, or you're on the desk, or you're out next to a live truck, you are representing the station. And now you're doing a jig to a rap song, sometimes with not so pleasant lyrics. I just think it gives off the wrong impression. And the next minute, we're supposed to trust you and believe you that you're going to do a story about a homicide. No way. I hate it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And another thing, if you're sending Scott Jones those videos, send them to me too, because we'll put them on the podcast.
Okay,
Because
you
that's
got
what we're all
it.
about. Really, it is. That's what our podcast is all about, is
Yeah.
making fun of people. But that leads me to the question that I had after that annoyed you. Where do you think journalism goes from here, Peter? Like,
I
where
think
do we go?
it's scary, Steve, because journalism, TV has become so polarized, especially cable. Obviously, we have on the right Fox and OAN, and there's a couple of ancillary ones. And on the left, we have MSNBC and some of the others out there that are left leaning. Whatever happened to being unbiased and just reporting the news? I don't want to hear anyone on either side tell me what I should be thinking or what they think. Present me with the facts. You know, Fox used to say, fair and balanced, we report, you decide. If they stuck to that, I'd be really happy with it. And on the left, I think that you watch was it Scarborough? I don't even watch them anymore. You know, they'll blast Trump, and sometimes I look back and I go, well, that wasn't such a bad thing that President Trump did. Why are you
Mhm.
blasting him? Because they've been given orders. They've been giving marching orders from someone else to be either left or right. So talking about the future, I think we need to have an operation where you're neither right, you're neither left, just give me the news. And by the way, News Nation claims that they are that. They are not. They are not.
Well, I think or I should say, not I think, because I don't know at all, but I hope that we can get to a point where we become less polarized. So I think maybe we've come down this path and we all of a sudden got to this point where you choose your news outlet based on your own bias. Which when I was young, I always use this example of a Walmart going into a neighborhood, and I, as a reporter, happen to live in that neighborhood. If I don't want the Walmart and I'm covering that story, I will side with the people who do want the Walmart a little bit more in my story because I know that I have some underlying bias and maybe I should give them just a little bit more time. If you're doing 5 sound bites, give the people who want the Walmart 3 and give the people who don't want the Walmart 2 sound bites. It just I like to lean away from my own bias, and I was kind of taught to do that as a
Yeah.
journalist. That
Right.
if you think you have an opinion, try to lean away from your own opinion. And I think that that's a lost art. Journalists just don't do that anymore.
Right. And remember when you were in J school and they would say how important it is to not present the news in a biased fashion. Now we could all agree child abuse is bad, murder bad, stealing bad. I'm talking about I guess, the political realm. I don't think it's right for a reporter to give their opinion on something, especially when it comes to politics. On either side, if they do it, I think to myself, oh, I'm not watching an unbiased report here. I just want them to tell me what's happening. So what's the future? I think there's going to be a shakeout. I know here in Orlando, or in the Orlando market, we've got, 2, 9, 6, 35, all chasing the same story every day. In Tampa, there's even more. You've got Univision and Telemundo and all this stuff. So they're all and cable. I guess, well, there's News 13 where you are,
Yeah.
not where you are in Orlando. So I can't imagine that they can split that pie, and then there's cable, and then newspapers are gone by the wayside.
Streaming.
Streaming, yeah, streaming. So what is the future? I think maybe less outlets covering stories. I don't need 5 television stations telling me that there was a murder at a 7-Eleven.
Okay, but you've got something interesting there in the Villages, and I watched it. You have this local couple who do their own little streaming podcast, right? And so they're talking about the smallest stories in the Villages. Like, are they really going to rezone that piece of property off of Highway X, Y, or Z? I mean, they kind of dial it down. Is there a place for that where people can come out and say, hey, I'm going to be just like I'm going to lead my HOA. I'm going to be the journalist for my community, and I'm going to decide that I'm going to actually go to that school board meeting tonight and find out about that property that the school district owns and whether they're going to put a high school there or whether it's going to be a new bus depot.
Well, I do a segment for it's Jerry and Linda is the folks here in the Villages, and they've had it's like a 6-year running, you call it a podcast. They don't really cover news per se. When I first got here, I thought they did, and I would shoot something on my camera and send it in, and they didn't really use it. So I think it's hyper local. By the way, my little segment is called Bubble Wrap. We call ourselves here in the Villages living in the bubble, and my story is rapping about the bubble. So
Okay.
it's a weekly thing. By the way, when I go out in town now here in the Villages, people come up to me and they go, "Hey, the bubble wrap guy, have you seen any of my? Have you seen it?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, and I end all of them with say, "I'm Peter Bernard, and that's this week's bubble wrap." And I put a sound of a bubble popping when I snap my fingers, and people come up to me when I'm in the squares and say, "Hey, you're the bubble wrap guy." So I've no more Channel 8 stuff. You're the news guy. You're the bubble wrap guy, which is kind of funny.
I should have added that to my list when I was introducing you, that you're also the bubble wrap guy down in the
Bubble
Villages.
wrap guy, yeah.
Okay,
But it's
since
how,
we've transitioned to the Villages, okay,
yeah.
the Villages is famous. I mean, it's almost famous worldwide for certain things. And I know you're a married man, married with children, but is there really this crazy singles scene there in the Villages, or is it kind of a myth and something that's been blown up? Because one of the big things is sexually transmitted diseases. Well, once you get to certain ages, obviously the percentage of people with any disease, I'm sure the Villages has a very high rate of cancer as well, a very high rate of heart disease as well. But
Yep.
has the Villages gotten a bad rap, or is there really that vibrant singles scene there?
All right. This has been perpetuated for years. There's this whole thing about what color loofahs you have on your golf car. There's this whole thing about STDs. And I understand, I haven't Googled it lately, but when I first got here, I heard people snickering about it. So I did, and I looked it up, and we do not have the highest STD rate. I had a neighbor where I used to live down in Pinellas County saying, "Oh, you're moving the highest STD rate." And while I looked it up, it's not true. I think what we're seeing here, Steve, is it's kind of fun to tee-hee and giggle about elderly people and seniors getting it on, at different houses, different nights.
Yeah.
I've not witnessed it. I haven't seen it. We do have singles clubs, which I think is great because they become widows, unfortunately. That's one thing I think is weird about living here is I hear a siren and I think, oh, I hope that's not another widow or widower or somebody that died. And
Yeah.
I'm on the AED committee. I'm supposed to go out with the little, with the paddles and resuscitate them. But I think it's a myth. the whole loofah thing. I don't know if you heard that. They have different colored loofahs. Like if you have a
Uh-uh.
red one, you're available. If you're blue and you're gay, and if you want a threesome, it's a different color. That all stuff has been talked about and talked about. And from what I gather, and I'm out in the community a lot, completely mythical, fun little. It's tee-hee. It's people that don't live in the villages that like to think of grandma and grandpa getting it on with different couples.
No, so I live in Minnesota now, and when I lived in Florida, I heard it, but of course I'm in Orlando, so I'm covering the villages. So I was up there often doing stories, and so you'd hear these things. But it really got me when I came up here, and whenever you mention the villages, people say, "Oh, isn't that place where all those people are?" And I'm like,
We're
"Well,
156,000 people. We're growing all the time. They're building a whole new thing called Eastport and all new neighborhoods going in. We have 259 pickleball courts. I think there's 115 pools. The place is enormous. We span 3 counties, and it's run by a family. You probably know this already, but I'll explain it to your viewers. The Morse family,
mhm.
Morse. And they have an iron fist as to the information that's going out. They run a cable operation. They have the newspaper. They sell golf cars. They are intertwined in all our lives. I look
Huh?
at it this way: it's a beneficial dictator, and so far so good. They keep the place looking really sharp, and we pay up the nose for it. There's an amenity fee that we pay, and so far, as long as they keep it up, I'm good with it. We can't no trash cans, no RVs in the front, no storage of boats, and I'm fine with all that. It makes the quality of life better.
Huh. Well, that's great. Good. We got some inside information on what it's really like there in the villages.
Oh yeah.
So, all right. Let's. I'm going to go through my list. We talked a little bit, and one of the interesting things, and it's a current events thing about you, is how involved you became with Tesla and Teslas and the car itself. Um, Tell me about that. So you were an early adopter of electric vehicles, right?
Yes. In 2019, I bought my first one when I worked at Channel 8. When I retired in 2020, I went to go work for them. And I was at International Plaza, which is a big upscale mall in Tampa right near the airport. And I worked for them for about 4 months. I decided I didn't want a boss, so I quit. It ended up being a good thing. But I kind of got the inside scoop of how Tesla works. Have since traded in that 2019. I bought my wife a Model Y, and about 6 months ago, I got a new Model 3. I love the car. I love its technology. It's a computer with wheels. The sound system is good. The acceleration just is freaking kick-ass. I go 0 to 60 in
Oh,
2.9. So, I tell people when I punch the accelerator, put your head back because I don't want any
yeah.
whiplash in this car.
I've felt that. I've been in a Tesla Plaid and had it
Uh-huh.
in, I think it's called launch mode or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you are pinned back in that seat.
yeah.
Well, so moving on, and look back. I kind of did a little bit of research on you, even though we know each other because we worked
Yep,
together for a couple of years in Tampa.
yep.
But you many years ago sort of drew a line between you loving Tesla and not necessarily a fan of Elon Musk. But
Well, yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
and that was long before Doge. I mean, this was
Yep.
long before his support for Trump and things like that, that you were seeing things in Elon Musk that you didn't like. And I don't
Well,
want this to be a political thing, but I want to ask you, what is your feeling on now that Tesla has been directly connected to him, and now the Tesla brand has become sort of this evil thing?
it's been tarnished. And it disturbs me. I gave a lecture. I'm also on the board of the Village's Tesla Club, and I gave a speech, a talk to our members, and that was the subject of it. Like, are you worried about your Tesla getting vandalized if you go out of town? Now, here in the Villages, it's pretty right wing, and I don't think people are going to be vandalizing my car. But in other places, are you worried? And I've thought about bringing my 9 millimeter in the car when I travel certain places. So it's scary. I don't like the fact that Tesla has, or Elon has lost, at least not has 100% focus on the car. Now, lately, he's stated that he's going to reduce his affiliation with Doge and maybe just do it a couple of days a week. I'm hoping he gets back to the business of innovation. SpaceX, unbelievable. What a company. NASA couldn't do it. Elon Musk did. Electric cars. Everyone's now following in Tesla's footsteps. The first mass-produced Tesla was in like 2011 or 2012, and they were selling cars like gangbusters. Now their stock is down 72%. Sales are plummeting worldwide. Spain, England, in revolt to some of the things that Elon Musk has done. I am a fan of his as I would be Thomas Edison or Harvey Firestone or some of the other people that are out there, but I am concerned that he's lost sight. I want him to laser focus on Tesla and innovation. I get updates in my car about every 6 to 8 weeks, and sometimes they're completely revamping the way things operate in the car, or new services and new features, and that is exciting to me. I'm like a kid on Christmas morning when I go out to my car and I have all these new things. I want
See
him to.
that's annoying to me when my car changes where something is or my phone does. I can't take it. But you're
Creature
a
of
tech
habit.
guy. I'm not necessarily a tech guy. I'm still trying to figure out how the hell to do a podcast. One of these days I'm going to move off of Zoom instead of doing it on Zoom, and I'll find one of these real podcast softwares.
I
But
love. I'm a tech head. Everything in this house is voice operated. I can turn lights off and on with my voice and everything. It's great.
wow, that is good.
Like those lights you see there. What? Alexa, turn off bedroom, and off they go.
Wow. That's really cool. Actually, that was if you're only listening to this interview right now, you should go to the YouTube version and watch that moment right there. Now turn it
You
back
can.
on, Peter.
Now, you do it. Use the
Okay.
phraseology. Only say turn on.
It's Alexa or Siri.
Alexa.
Alexa, turn bedroom on.
I guess Alexa, turn on bedroom.
Oh, it must not like the electronic voice.
I think so. I do it with fans and lights and TV and let's see here. Oh, air conditioning. I can say Alexa. I always spell her when I don't want it to happen. I can say
Yeah.
set thermostat to 72 and she'll say thermostat set to 72.
Yeah, so my wife's daughter, my stepdaughter, is named Alexa, so we can't use Alexa. We have to call it Echo.
Right. Or computer. You can change it to
Yeah.
computer. Right.
No, I didn't want to say computer. Echo is a little bit easier for me.
Yeah. So on Tesla, I love the car. I love the tech. I love the things, the software updates and stuff. And the sound is just, it's got 17 speakers and two subs. And I have rediscovered, I'm a Beatles fan and some of the old, so Bee Gees fan. I've discovered music I haven't heard for decades by just listening to it in the car.
Yeah. No, I like to ask to create a station. Like if you create a Huey Lewis station, it's just good music, and you
Yeah.
find a couple of these people and, it'll make a Jackson Brown station or something like that. There are a few that I shout out that really just put a great playlist together for you. And I think that part's amazing because obviously we go back to the days of making mixtapes
Yeah.
where maybe you'd have your record player and your tape recorder, and either you'd have it near the speaker, or if you were really good, you would have a wire that would connect
Yeah.
the two to an output. But now music used to take up so much of our lives, just putting our music together, finding the music that we wanted, buying the album, going to the store and buying the album. Music really took up a lot of time for us. And kids
Yep.
these days, they just have it like that.
Oh,
Right
yeah.
at their
Instant
fingertips.
gratification. I've got Spotify in my Tesla, and so now when I like a song, I put a little star next to it. Now it comes up in my rotation, and it's pretty cheap. It's like $18 for a family plan. I got my kids on it too.
Yeah. And what's funny though, while they have all this new access to music, I find that my kids want to listen to the old music that I raised them on.
Hallelujah. That's
So
good.
I went with my son on his boat in Tampa Bay. He lives over on Rocky Point, and so he's got a boat right there by his condo, and we take his boat out. And the whole day, I knew every song, and I had raised him on every song, and he still listens to that stuff. So
And
that's
fun.
really nice to
That's
know.
fun. That's
Your
great.
kids are grown, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. My son's 32. My daughter's 20, 28. My wife's
Okay.
going to run in here and say, you got that right. It's around in there. Yeah. They live
Yeah.
in the Bay area still. He's in Ruskin. My daughter is in Holiday, which is in Pasco County.
All right, good. Yeah, my son is the only one left there in Tampa, and then I have my brother in Tampa, and my mom still live. My mom lives in a nudist colony, Peter. I don't know if you knew that about me.
Paradise Resorts?
Paradise Lakes. My mother
Paradise Lake.
lives at a nudist
Seriously.
colony. Yeah, she has since I was a teenager.
And you're getting after me about the villages.
I wasn't getting after you. I was just asking. I was just curious because everyone is curious. I was just
I,
asking the question that everyone asks about the villages,
I
and
know.
you
I get it
you
all
answered
the
it
time.
very eloquently. And
Thank
my
you.
answer was because there was a report at one point. Someone put out a report, and it was a kind of a legitimate thing that there was a higher rate of STDs in the villages, and I immediately my journalism brain went to, Well, I'm sure that there is a higher rate of every kind of disease because you've been on the planet longer.
Right,
Like
right.
there's no high rate of, you know, this or that in 2 year olds,
Right.
for the
Yeah.
most part. But
We're a microcosm of society, and we've got, you can read in there's another paper here called the Village's News, and there's people beating up their wives and getting drunk and running stop signs. Everything it's not Shangri-La. I do describe it as Disney World for adults, but we do have our warts.
nudist colonies the same way. You have every kind of people. You have the crazy swinger people on one side, and then you have the naturists who it's all natural and they're insulted by the swinger people because they don't think of the human body as a sexual thing. They think that your elbows are no different than your nipples.
Yeah.
It's just fleshy parts of your body, so you get every extreme. You get the uppity people who think that you should be walking around naked at all times of the day. And then you get the people that they just want to get a little bit of sun for an hour or two and they do it out back of their house,
I
so.
remember they used to have a spokesman down there. Maybe, I don't know if it was Paradise Lakes. There's another one too. She was a spokesman at one of them, and her last name was Fox, which I thought was appropriate because she was pretty foxy. And I always thought it was funny that they had a person that you could call to ask questions. And sometimes reporters would do stories out there, and of course they would do the obligatory only wearing a tie and show them certain angles.
So one of the reasons that I ended up at Channel 28 was because the Society of Professional Journalists would have the SPJ awards every year, right? And we'd have them there in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And one year, I was just a videographer and a producer over at Channel 13, which is the Fox affiliate there in Tampa, and we went to the SPJ Awards, and the first year that Channel 28 went on the air, I, as a photographer, won the best reporting category. And it was a story called Running Naked, and it was about a nude 5K. And so it was really just like a photo essay. I told the whole story with interviews with these people. And I was proud of myself because I said to myself, I'm going to do this without blurring anything. So I used all like leaves on a tree to
Right.
cover up this part.
Yeah.
I remember interviewing a woman. She had this really long hair. And so I interviewed her and I just took all of her hair and just put it right over her chest. And so I did it very creatively, but I won the reporting category, and all the reporters were mad because they said that didn't even have a reporter in it. There's no
Yeah.
reporter. How can it win the reporting category? But it won. And
How
so
about
it
that?
was after that that Bob Jordan and Steve Majors gave me a call and said, "Hey, do you want to come over?" And so I worked there at Channel 28, ended up in management, which I hated, Peter. I don't think I told anyone at the time. I hated being a manager. I couldn't
Well, you
stand
you were
it.
approving. You had a pencil and you would approve my scripts.
And I felt like an idiot doing it because I'm like, wait a second, Peter's been doing the script writing part of this longer than I have. Why am I checking his scripts because I've been told to? And the other thing was that I found it much more difficult to try to get other people to be creative than being creative myself. So it's a
Yeah.
completely different set of skills. So I
Mhm.
was able to make myself be creative and put my
Mhm.
heart and soul into my stories, right?
Right.
But getting another person to do that with their own stories is a completely different animal.
Right. And you've got a 5 and a 6 and whatever. Now we've got a 4 and a 4:30, and it's a sausage factory. So I don't know. When you're approving scripts like that, I've seen the people look at my stuff and they go, yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, good. And then I'll catch in editing or when I'm doing my audio a glaring error, and I go, they didn't catch it when they were approving my script, and I just called the defendant the plaintiff and the plaintiff the defendant. And I go, holy shit! If that had gone on the air,
See, and
wow.
I was horrified that I was going to miss something like that back then. So I would go through it with a fine tooth comb, and it probably seemed ridiculous, but I was just worried that somehow I'm going to miss something and then it's going to be my fault. I and from that point on, I said to myself, you know what, Steve, you're going to be responsible for your own product and forget about being, I decided I never want to be a news director. I never want to be an executive producer. I never want to be anything except Steve Barrett. And here's the product that Steve Barrett provides. And that's it. And I go home and I wipe my hands of it. And then I decided I didn't even want to do investigative stuff because then you can kind of take your job home with you. But if
Yeah.
you cover news of the day, for the most part, you don't take your job home with you.
Yeah, I found that to be the case. And sometimes I'd come home and I'd say to my wife, "Hey, did you see my piece tonight?" We call it the piece. And
Yeah.
she'd say, "No, what was it about?" And I found, especially with my kids, I didn't want to, I just lived 8 hours of some house fire or whatever I did that day. And I didn't want to spend another few minutes. Well, there was this house fire and there were some dogs inside. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. So sometimes I'd say, if you didn't see it, you missed it.
That's good. I found myself many times avoiding telling, Dad, what'd you do today? Yeah, well, you don't want to know.
Yeah, right.
Because it was bad. Because when I felt like when I'm in your neighborhood, you don't want me there. It's not
Right.
that you don't like me, it's that I'm there for a reason that you don't want whatever thing I'm covering,
Yeah. It's
you
like
don't
Jim
want.
Cantori coming to your beach.
Right. Yep. Exactly. That's exactly right. Um, all right. So I want to get let's get back to you, Peter. So you're a meteorologist and you used to do the weather.
Right.
But at one point you decided I don't want to do the weather, or did you decide that you liked
It
being in the field more? How did
It
that
was kind
happen?
of decided for me. Channel 8 was owned by Media General, and they paid for my schooling to go to Mississippi State University. Now, when I say go to, it was a correspondence course. So I got a certificate in meteorology from Mississippi State. And in doing so, they put me on the weather on the weekends and sometimes fill in this and fill in that.
Ah,
We had a meteorologist one time, I hate to say this, but he committed suicide, a guy named John Winter.
hmm.
And so when he
Really?
died, oh yeah. When he died, I became the morning meteorologist for quite a while because he needed to hire someone. They ended up hiring a gal named Lee Spann, and the rest is history. But so I walked into that role, and I really tried to get into weather full time because I thought it would be less stress, which it is, except when a hurricane's approaching. But Steve Jervy, and I love the guy. Steve Jervy is one of the salt of the earth guys. I remember him saying, "Peter, you're doing a great job, but I want someone who's going to be doing 2 days a week weather and then 3 days a week helping me in the weather center. And I have a feeling you're going to be sticking your head out of the weather center into the newsroom and going, 'Hey, what's going on with that homicide?'" And
Yeah.
he was right. He was right. My head was not weather, weather, weather. It was a self-preservation, lower the stress. So it was decided for me, but it ended up being a better decision.
Yeah, I mean, I remember distinctly, and it was part of that management thing that I had to do for a while, that I did not like being in the newsroom. That was the first time that I was stuck in the newsroom all day long. And I just decided that wasn't an atmosphere that I liked. And it's like trying to bring the dog inside after they've been playing in the yard forever.
Right.
I kept looking outside going, wait a second, I want to go play in the yard. And I
Yeah.
never
Well,
got to
Bob
play in the
Jordan's
yard
famous.
anymore.
We both know Bob Jordan. We worked for him, and he would scream in our newsroom. Do you remember what he would say?
No news in the newsroom.
Very good, Steve. That's exactly. So, what are you all reporters doing in here? There's no news in the newsroom. Now, sometimes my story was done because I was a fast worker.
Yeah.
I was really fast. And I would knock it out and I'd come back to the air conditioned comfort of the station to put it together. And he'd look at me and say, "You already done with your story?" I'd say, "Yeah, we got the B-roll and everything." And I could tell that he didn't like the fact that I was sitting at my desk.
Yeah, I always so I worked in Bob Jordan newsrooms for the vast majority of my career. Once I came to Channel 28, which was 1998, 97, 98, something like that. That's dating us, right?
Yeah.
So that was when I started working for Bob, and then I just skipped from one station to another to another. I went back to Channel 5 in West Palm Beach, and then I ended up at Channel 9 in Orlando with Bob until he left, went to Seattle, and then retired. So I worked with him. I might be one of his longest running employees, along with like Marty Salt, who you know as Marty Tucker.
Exactly.
But we
You know
worked
what?
with great people, Peter. We
Yeah.
we worked with the best journalists in the state of Florida at that time,
Yep.
and I think we can be proud of the work that we did, the people that we worked with. Be very proud of them because they were all great.
Yep. People told me when I was auditioning to work at Channel 28 and I would say, "Hey, it's Bob Jordan," and he's a storied news director. He's a legend in this
Yes.
business. And they'd say, "Well, he's kind of hard to work for." And then other people would say, "Peter, as long as you're pedaling as fast as you can and that he detects that you're doing your best work, you got nothing to worry about." And I will tell you that I never had a screaming match with him. He and I saw eye to eye. Steve Majors a little less so. He was kind of a Bob Jordan's hatchet man, and sometimes he and I
Mhm.
would have some knockdown dragouts. But I, to this day, respect Bob Jordan. I respect the late Forrest Carr at Channel 8, who was just a newsman's newsman. Hold the powerful accountable, all that kind of stuff. We lived by that at Channel 8 when Forrest Carr was there. Obviously, it's gone by the wayside now.
Yeah. No, behind the scenes, a lot of times it was the people, it was the photographers and a lot of times some of the producers were great because you'd call them up and you say, "Hey, I'm really having trouble trying to find, what angle I can take on this story because I feel like I'm doing what everybody else is doing." And sometimes you'd have a great producer that would say, "Well, what about this? What if you called this person? Or what if you
Right.
thought about this?" So I'm just glad that I got to work in the heyday of broadcast journalism, and I got to work in some of the best newsrooms around. And you did too at Channel 8. I almost worked at
Yeah.
Channel 8, but ended up at
Channel
Channel
8 was
13.
Channel 8 was the kick-ass number one station for a long time. And when I got there, they were solid number one. I used to say that we could put a test pattern on at 11 o'clock and we'd win the ratings. There was some producers there that I just loved, especially when it came to breaking news. There was one in particular who's gone her own way and gone elsewhere. But let's say at 55, maybe I sent in a soundbite at 45, but now I learned new information for the 11. And I'd call her at 55 after, and I'd say, "Kill that soundbite. I've got a new one, or I've got a live interview." And she'd say, "Okay, Peter, just tell me what you want to do." And there was no grief, there was no guff. I've worked with producers that'll say, "Oh no, I can't change. I got my rundown all set. F that. I don't care about your damn rundown. We have new information. That soundbite is now dated and we should not run it. I'm running this now." But she was real good. She would roll with the punches. She'd just say, "Give me an obvious roll cue." I'd even say on TV, "Let's look at what he said." That's the roll cue, damn it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Peter, hey, this has been a great talk. Anything that you can remember off of our list of things that we exchanged that you want to say something about?
Well, I was going to talk about GLP-1 weight loss, but that's not really news related. I don't know if you wanted to get into that.
Well, let's get into it then.
All right.
Because I think a lot of people are very confused about that, and I happen to have my opinions on it. But go ahead.
All right. Um, I have, since moving to here and getting out of the TV business, I just eat too much. And I was weighing 203, not proud of it. The jowls started to look bad and belly and drinking beer and this and that. So I decided to lose weight. And I didn't trust that I could do it just on my own. So I signed up and I am now injecting myself with a product called Zepbound, which is terzepatide. That's the official name of it. And I've lost 21 pounds in 7 weeks. My goal
Wow.
is to get down to 175. I'm now at 183 or 182, depending on what time. I love it. Yeah, there are some pretty serious side effects that can affect you. So far, it hasn't with me. There is a whole community of people out there on YouTube, bloggers, vloggers that talk about this. And it's very interesting to see other people's success. There's people who've lost 120, 130 pounds. I think it's going to lower my cholesterol, lower my blood pressure. I have obstructive sleep apnea. You can see my machine back there on the thing. I'm hoping someday to not ever have to wear that again.
Well, this is comes back to what I told you. I have my opinion on it. So my brother was pre-diabetic. He was way overweight, and he has now lost. And I don't know which one he's using. I think it's Wegovy or something. But he's lost 70 pounds, and all of his other weight-related health problems are now gone. So when people say, "Okay, let's all be worried about the side effects. Oh, it could do this or it could do that, or there's not enough research and we're not enough research into that." To me, I think these types of medicines are reducing the risk of death in all the other categories by so much that why wouldn't we be exploring this in a major way? Because your blood pressure's going down. If you've got diabetes, some people, my brother's not even pre-diabetic anymore. He's fine. He looks great. He's healthier. His knees are better. His back is better. His heart is better.
Yep.
Everything's better.
Yeah.
Except maybe there might be some long-term effect when he's 58, 59 now. When he's 80, he might have some effect that we didn't know about.
Yeah, there could be some long-term effects. Now, these are not new drugs. They've been around for a long time. The one I'm taking, Zepbound, was just approved for weight loss back I think, in November of last year. But they've been doing a bunch of trials. It is supposed to be for diabetes. I was pre-diabetic also. I think I'm below that threshold, and I've gone from obese, which I hate that word, to overweight at 183 at 5'7". I hope to be normal. And you're right, all those things, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obstructive sleep apnea. I just feel better now that I'm not carrying around 21 pounds. I'm better on the pickleball court. I play tennis and I'm better
Hmm.
on the tennis court. And then I walk out there, I'm hoping no one's, I know they weren't because, there's a lot of people who are overweight here in the villages being, it's a retirement community, but I don't want someone to say, look at that fat guy coming out to play. And I think that I've improved my
Good.
looks. I feel a little lighter in my step. People say that they see it in my face. You haven't seen me in a while, but I used to have little pudgy cheeks going on here, but that's gone away.
Wow. That's awesome. And I think it says a lot about you that you're willing to say, "Hey, here's what I've done, and it's had a
Right.
positive effect on my life."
Right, you got to weigh it. Okay, yeah, pancreatic cancer is a possibility. They say there's some people who develop thyroid issues. Constipation is something that comes along with it, and you solve that. There's maybe some problems with some sleeplessness and some nausea. I've had little mild nausea, but I try to sleep through it. I take my drug at around 1 in the afternoon, and then it's an injection in my belly, by the way. And then the side effects will come on maybe 6 hours later, and by the time I want to go to sleep, maybe I want to sleep through the side effects. I'll tell you, Steve, they say it's a game changer, and I really think it is. I think it's a miracle drug. If we find out something 10 years from now that it's going to make me grow a second head, I'll live with it.
All right. Well, Peter, hey, this has been great.
I'm
It's
glad
been
you
a
enjoyed it. Good
fantastic.
talking to you. You're easy to
Yeah.
talk to. You know why? Because you're a reporter at heart. We both are. And
Right.
so we know just let it fly. And I think we talked about this before we went on, like, oh, I've got this list of stuff, and you referred to some of them, but the best interviews in television are the ones that are off the cuff. I'll tell you a quick story before you hang up this thing. I remember being out in television with a particular photographer, and I would do my interview. They put a microphone on them, and they'd stand there and answer questions. And I'd say, okay, that sounds good. And the tripod would come down, and the person would now let their hair down and start telling me stuff that they didn't say during the interview. And I looked at the photographer. Now, this photographer I used to work with, sometimes I'd look at her and she's not rolling, and I'd say, Davis, I'd try to nudge her. Roll on this. This is better than
Oh,
what we
right.
got.
Right.
So it's that kind of candid stuff, like candid, fun, just friends talking about life and TV news, and those are the best way. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and on the opposite end, I sometimes found there's a fine line between doing a pre-interview and then rolling because sometimes in the pre-interview, you'll ask somebody a question, they'll have a great answer, and then all of a sudden, once you say ask it a second time, that second answer is sort of a summary of the first
Right.
answer when really what you wanted was that great answer right out of the get-go.
And people sometimes, when they see the camera going and the microphone's out in their face, they think they have to be all formal. I've had people that sound like they're not even speaking English, and I go, "Can you tell me that again? But just act like we're all drinking buddies here. You sounded like you were giving a lecture to a group of scientists. Just talk to me like we're old pals."
Yeah. My mom's a judge, and she does that to me sometimes when she talks about legal stuff. All of a sudden, my head starts swirling around, and I'm like, wait, don't explain that to me like I'm an attorney because I am not.
Right,
So,
right, right.
all right. Well, Peter, hey, I appreciate you coming on the Barrett and Baxa podcast. You're
Sure
you're
thing.
our first bonus episode, and I
All right.
appreciate that. Maybe we'll get
Terrific.
Bob Jordan on here one day.
I think he would do it. I have
I think
his,
he'll do it.
yeah, he's a Facebook friend of mine, and he comments on my stuff a lot. So if you probably have his contact
Yeah.
information. I think
We
he
do,
would.
but you can pressure him too. The more
Yeah.
pressure he gets to get on TV with us, we won't be that hard on him. Although I will call him on some of the legend of Bob Jordan and some of the
Oh, yeah.
stories that float around about him because
He's
he
living
was
the
a
good
tough
life
guy.
down. He's living the good life down there in Estero. He cracks me up. He posts pictures of things that he cooks and makes for his wife. I see lots of food posts and things.
And I was in the newsroom with him when Facebook and when all of these things started happening. And he would say, who would post that? Who would tell someone where they went to lunch? And who would post? Why would people do this? And now Bob does it. So he
The chickens
obviously
have come
figures it
home
out.
to roost.
There you go. Hey, that was another line of his
Oh,
that he
yeah.
used a lot. All right, Peter, thank you. You have a great week, man.
Same to you. Good talking.